Hey guys. This week we're talking about Chapter 7. You also have an exam, so make sure that you turn that in by the deadline, and make sure to look in the lessons folder where I've given you guys some examples or some ideas of things that you can improve upon from the last exam. Anyway, aside from that, we are going to be working on Chapter 7 this week, trudging on through. Anyway, to go ahead and get started, I am looking at the PowerPoint for this one if you wanted to follow along with me. On slide 2, or the first major slide, it says basic terms, and it lists a slew of different things that we really need to understand so that we're all on the same playing field, just to make sure that we're speaking the same language, I guess, when we're talking about different terms. One of the things, and I'm not going to go into much detail about this because it's part of your discussion topic this week, is A, B, and C languages, or L1, L2, and L3 languages. Your chapter does talk about that at the very beginning, so go ahead and read up on that. It also discusses source and target languages. I usually, when I'm in class teaching this, like actually face-to-face, I'll try to do a trick question and ask students, well, as interpreters, who interpret between English and American Sign Language, what is our target language and what is our source language? And very often people will say, well, our source language is English and our target language is ASL. Well, that's not true. Your target language is whatever language you're interpreting into, and your source language is whatever language you're interpreting from. So it could go either way. If I'm voicing for someone, then my target language would be English. At least in our case it would be. And my source language at that point would be ASL because that's the language I'm taking it in from. So it flip-flops back and forth. It's never one or the other. Very often it'll change even midstream, especially if it's a consultative, casual, or intimate register. Very often it's going to be a banter back and forth. And so it's going to reverse every few minutes or every few seconds. So anyway, just keep that in mind. It's not one set thing. Processing time is something else that your book touches on, and it is so important. I would say that's probably one of the things I could work on the most in my own interpreting, is my processing time. I have a few interpreting friends. If anybody knows Peggy Carpenter, she's awesome. And she has the most amazing processing time of any interpreter that I've probably ever met. And what I mean by that is the time that you take in the language and then you think about how you want to interpret it into the next language before you produce it in whichever format it is. And what's funny about Peggy is that if you haven't teamed with her before, a lot of interpreters think that she's just not getting it because she holds on to it for so long. She holds it and holds it and holds it, and the person is still talking or signing and she's still holding the message, and then she finally starts interpreting. And she's still listening or watching everything that's still coming in, but she has a delayed reaction when she starts producing her her target language message. And so it's funny to watch her because people will start trying to feed her early, even though she doesn't need it, just because they're not used to her. So it is difficult. We definitely are multitasking as interpreters, and it's so difficult. If this were easy, everybody would do it, right? It is a fun job, though. That's why I keep on with it. Next on your list there, under basic terms, it says translation. I've seen even some of you guys in your postings or on your exam, your last exam, make the comment that we are translators. And, a lot of people will use that term. However, I want to caution you that more often than not we're either called interpreters or transliterators. Most of the time when people are talking about translation, they mean from text to text. So a frozen text to a frozen text. And I don't even mean the way that we sign a frozen text. I mean like a book to a book or a document to a document. Usually that's what language translation refers to. And what we do, and I'll get into this more in the next few slides, is interpret or transliterate. So, just FYI about that. Next on your list is sight translation. This is something that we do, and it's very similar to regular translation. What it is where we have, say, a written document of English, and we are reading it and signing it. This is also a new component to the Texas BEI exam. The They didn't used to have this component on there, but now you have a timed exam or a portion of your exam where you have a written document. It's a full page of a text, and you know, it could be anything that's something you would commonly sight translate to a deaf person. I honestly, I have no idea. I'm not giving anything away by telling you guys because I'm just making this up. But, you know, I mean, I'm guessing some common things, at least that I practice in some of my own interpreting classes that I teach, are, you know, medical intake forms, W-2 forms, apartment rental forms, anything that has some legal jargon to it, workplace or drug-free workplace forms, sexual harassment forms, all of those kinds of things are very likely, there's a high likelihood that you might end up interpreting those, and I have quite often in the past. One of the examples, and I can't remember if I told you guys this before or not, but just because you sight translate, there are a variety of reasons why you might do that. Sometimes it's because it's just jargon that is very particular to that profession or that area. For example, if I started talking about price ceilings, I'm not actually talking about how much the ceiling cost, right? In business terms, it means something completely different than what we have the typical English words to mean. And so if I don't know what that means, then I can't effectively interpret it. Also, if a deaf person were to read that, they may not, heck, we as hearing people might not understand what it means if we were to see that. I was so proud of myself one time because I was an awesome interpreter. I'm lying, by the way. But I got to an assignment. I was pretty new. Thought I was doing pretty well. Got in my seat. I was a substitute interpreter for a business class one day, and it was old school, you know, that the overhead projector like right next to me. And so the teacher started talking about overhead costs. And so in my best ASL sentence that I thought I could make, I looked at the deaf person and I was like, overhead cost, how much? As in like, the overhead machine, how much does it cost? Idiot! Idiot! You know, and the deaf person just starts shaking their head like this, and they're like, that's not what that means, you know? And they're like, that's the cost of running a business. I was like, oh. So, you know, I mean, even as hearing people, sometimes I sure wish there was somebody to sight translate my documents for me. Another example I like to give of that one, very sad, I have a deaf friend who is highly proficient in English. She's very, very good. She has her bachelor's degree, but and maybe I've told you guys this, but she went to the hospital for a miscarriage, and when you have a miscarriage, very often you have to have a DNC where they clean you out, for a lack of a nicer way of saying that. Anyway, and when she got in there to do that, she started filling out the documents that the nurses had given her, and she looked at one of these documents and just started bawling. Now mind you, I was there as her friend, I wasn't there as her interpreter, but my deaf friend just starts bawling. And so I ask her for the page and I look at it and I immediately know what the problem is. It says that she had had a spontaneous abortion. Well, I know that that means miscarriage, but all my friend saw was abortion, and she started flipping out. And I can't blame her. I mean, her hormones were all out of whack. I mean, anytime you're pregnant, that's already going on. Then, I mean, a miscarriage is just a traumatic event for, it was at the time, especially for her and her family. I mean, they really wanted the baby. And so then to find out that she had miscarried, and then on top of that, she didn't want people thinking that she didn't want the baby. I mean, it was very emotional. And so after that point, she was crying so badly, her eyes just swelled up, and so I ended up sight translating the rest of her documents for her just because. And she's very proficient in English. Some of you guys might not know what it means if you saw spontaneous abortion. Anyway, so those are some reasons. Sometimes if people are from other countries, or if, I don't know, there are a variety of reasons. Maybe they have just lower English proficiency. Again, not knocking their intelligence by any means. Just because you don't know a specific language doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. So we'll continue on in this discussion in the next video. Thanks.